Am I an influencer? Who knows? Welcome everyone to another week of comic books with me, your friend Carlz. So, why am I an influencer this week? Because last week, I'm pretty sure I talked about Dani Moonstar, the new mutant, right? And between last week and this week, they announced she's getting her first solo series in March. Wow. I'm like, I cannot be happier. I'm pretty sure it's a new writer. It's like a whole new thing. She did a little bit of magic, I think, during the last. What is the name? Blood Hunt, the vampire event. Regardless, I think it's good an old time for Dani Moonstar to have her own solo series. It's a character that I liked for a long time. I really enjoyed her in the movie. You know, like New Mutants. I think the movie is. I'm not gonna say it's an underrated gem or anything like that, but I think it was a pretty decent movie. I think when all of the X-Men movies they try to be like a small self-contained event, they were pretty decent, right? It even surprised me that recently I had the chance to look at the Disney Plus menus, and they have Legion there, like as an X title, and I'm pretty sure they never really acknowledged that in the series. But whatever the case, that is my positive news. Dani Moonstar is finally getting a solo series. Besides that, I haven't read much of the new stuff that is coming out. There has been a lot of noise with still the current DC Marvel crossover. As I said, when a couple of weeks ago, I mentioned that I didn't really like Batman Deadpool. I thought it was just okay. So if they keep talking about, I think there's gonna be a Thor, Shazam, web exclusive, and a Flash one with the Fantastic Four. I think, but whatever, man. uh, my best luck to them, but like I don't really, I don't really care until they bring back the amalgam era and they do something like that. Until that happens, I don't think I will really care about it. But anyways, let's check out what is up this week. Many updates, a little bit like how you call it when you do something, but instead you want to do something else. Like this. Let's go straight into it. So, this week's book of the week is, of course, Absolute Batman, number 14. The final confrontation between Batman and Bane. Wow. I've praised this series as like 99% of the world because it's been awesome. Now it's not only the story arc is kind of coming to a real close, but they are showcasing a lot of characters that have been not in a pause, but after the organization that made Bane, and in a segue kind of way, Batman as well. After they mess up with all of Bruce's friends, they haven't been like in the spotlight. I think it's time they coming back, and of course I need to use this opportunity to talk about Absolute Batman the Annual by Daniel Warren Johnson. I still don't know how to exactly pronounce his last name, but man, that comic was awesome. It was so good. It was amazing. Like I've even forgotten how you can use Batman and like DC heroes to tackle current events in the US, but not only in the US, but like the now sadly how do you call it, a revolution, but like the rebirth of all these fascist or neo-fascist movements throughout the world, and they used Batman to criticize that. Everyone probably have already seen that when Batman is like breaking a cop's arm. Like, come on, man. It was so potent, it was so strong, and they introduced something that Absolute Batman, the main series, hasn't done mm, quite well. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in Absolute Batman, so that's why this wasn't that highlight. But they mention a little bit more of Bruce's relationship with his father. Unlike regular Batman, whose relationship with his parents is the whole deal, for Absolute Batman hasn't been that much. But they highlighted during the annual, and it was so good as well because the intensity of Absolute Batman was in a direct contrast and highlight with his relationship with his father. And those final shots, you can call them shots, right? Like a movie, with Bruce remembering his dad and sort of having this conflictive emotion. And like, even though it criticized, as I said, the current state of politics in most of the world, it still was ambiguous enough to make you wonder. It wasn't just a straight up propaganda. It was amazing. I think it, to me, has been one of the best comic books of the year. Absolute Batman Annual. And probably just like confirming once again that Daniel Warren Johnson is one of the best creators currently. Like the the whole comic, the drawings, the story, the flow of it, the action, like, it was amazing. But going back to regular Absolute Batman, now this has the core stories, right? The main guys, Bane and Bruce, who was manipulated by this shadowy organization, his relationship with Catwoman. They have like throw everything Batman into these short 14 numbers, but so much has happened. We have relied on what we know about Batman, especially when we see these characters, and according to that sort of contrast with what we know about Batman with this new proposal, we sort of complement and we allow the series to go faster and to go like more freely into a different direction. But now we're seeing like the ending of a story arc properly. Like, this has to go somewhere, Batman against Bane, and sort of solidify the status quo of the series going forward, especially with the gallery of rogues and kind of like the I was going to say multiverse, but just regular Batman universe, or Absolute Batman universe for that matter. Absolute Batman, the hit of the year, continues to be so. So this is not a good jumping point. You gotta go back and read the whole thing, and you're not gonna regret it. If you are a fan of Batman, or like most superheroes, I guess, it's been that good. Maybe not if you don't like. I don't like saying darker or like, but it's darker. But if maybe you like only, I don't know, what is the light-hearted hero in DC nowadays? Like, before you can always count on, I don't know, Booster Gold, but like he's not that cheapy anymore. Who else? The Teen Titans, and who's the cheapest, happiest hero in DC? That's a good question. It might be Supergirl. The current volume of Supergirl is going towards that direction. It might be that one. But anyways, Absolute Batman, the book of the week, and oh boy, look at that cover, man, just awesome. Next. So they are releasing another book called Arcadia under the black label at DC. It's gonna be a crossover between Batman, Green Arrow, and The Question. So what I like about this proposal basically is that I think The Question is one of those big interesting characters, in a sense that whenever they appear, is the story that takes over, because they are detectives. So the Question and Batman in a Black Label book, you can expect some good old detective mystery, being like it's a little bit slow sometimes. Whenever you read a book about the Question, it's always a lot of monologues and it's kind of like slow. But I think I've been missing a good detective story coming from DC. Like the last thing we saw about the Question, but the current Question, Rene Montoya, as being the head of security of the Justice League, it was okay, but the mystery was a little bit too fantastic because it's related to the Justice League. So I saw the cover, I saw the heroes involved, and I'm like, okay, I don't want to know anymore. I don't want to know anything more. I don't want to get spoiled or anything. So yeah, for detective fans, you can never go wrong with the Question and Batman. I don't know what the fuck Green Arrow is doing there. Green Arrow is one of those characters that in the comic books I've never gotten like really into it. I'm pretty sure I've said it, but I was a great enjoyer of the Arrowverse in the series, right? The whole Arrowverse universe at the CW, the live action series. But mainly because in that case, Green Arrow was like Batman. That's the truth. They sort of frame him as Batman. They did a lot of storylines like Batman, and Green Arrow in the comic books. Yeah, it's a little bit like Batman, but it's not Batman. So I never cared for the character that much. But well, anyways, what piqued my attention for this title is Batman and the Question. I'm not too familiar with Gabriel Hartman, so, but it's Black Label. Let's hope it's a good one. And if you can see on the cover, this looked like Tim Burton's Batman. And if, of course, it's the old Question, not the current Question. Anyways, more Batman, straight out for the week. Next, this is an update, kind of like, I'm already picking up my rhythm when I do these weekly shows, and this is like the update version. I've talked about the current Wilson's run of Black Cat and the whole Black Cat becoming, or Felicia Hardy becoming a hero. And I think not only they have nailed it, but there's something that I want to highlight and talk about in this update. I think Felicia Hardy has had the most personality written into her in a long time. This is how you do a solo series, because these characters, when they appear as like an opposed to the other main character, I mean like Black Cat appearing in Spider-Man or appearing in Mary Jane's books and anything, they always are more utilitarian. They don't have that time. Basically, you don't have the time to be your own character. So in this solo series, like, Black Cat has had the best opportunity to become a character and a person, and that is something that we often forget for these heroes in comic books, especially when they get caught up in big stories about multiverse or anything. So I've been really enjoying getting like a Felicia that is more personhood like, if you can say it in that way, because she's been through so much in recent times, and I gotta say, I gotta recommend it again. Like, jump into Black Cat, because this is just how you get not only into a character, but like how you get a fully formed character, from not necessarily to move forward, because sometimes after they develop these characters in their solo books, then of course, like in the next Marvel event, it's pretty unlikely that Black Cat is gonna be like one of the main characters, and we're gonna see the reflection of all of her development. But these are the chances for you not only to read it and to see it, especially when it's well made, like in this case, to see a fully formed character, how they think, how they act, how they talk. And well, this cover is a little bit out there, but it's the main cover. It's not even like an optional cover. And well, you do gotta write some sensuality into the character. It's implied, right? As long as it's not the main thing, it's a good implication. Black Cat, number 4. Next. So, this book made a lot of headlines, and it was pretty noticeable because one of the most beloved, what is it, celebrity actor, like, so Keanu Reeves. Everybody knows him for Bill and Ted. He wrote this book called BRZKR. If you're into comic books, you probably heard it about already, about this guy that he has like a sort of curse that make him immortal. But the drawback of that is that he needs to fight, he needs to kill, he needs to, like, always with fighting and murdering. The original run of it had, I didn't love it, I didn't hate it either. I thought the concept was simple enough. And some story arcs on the whole run had this kind of operatic feel to it. You know, like the tragic hero that is immortal but he's cursed to fight forever. It had some operatic moment and it was fairly decent enough. But to me, the concept itself wasn't that engaging. I thought, like, I heard this before, even in The Old Guard by Greg Rucka, which was pretty popular for good and bad reasons. I've heard this concept. It was highly violent and everything, and it's like, okay. I think, for some reason, I think it was more, it made more like noise that I think it should have. But anyways, why am I recommending this new story, BRZKR The Bleeding Tide? Because Marjorie Liu is linked to it as a writer. And of course, we know her from Monstress, one of the best comic books of the past, 10 years? Yeah, Monstress celebrated 10 years, I think. This year. It was 10 years, right? Let me see. Yeah, 2015. So we went 10 years of Monstress and like a bunch of credits in Marvel and anything. But to me, Marjorie Liu is Monstress by now. And I don't know exactly how would that necessarily reflect a change or not on the BRZKR storyline, but it's enough to make it fresh to me. You know, Keanu Reeves keep being like credited for it. I don't really know how much he did. Perhaps it's one of those situations where he just came up with an idea. He had an idea, and then he had writers come up with it. But anyways, let's hope Marjorie Liu gives the BRZKR franchise some, I don't know, depth. As I said, the previous one was like dramatic, like this, I don't know, big epic dramatic story, and that has an appeal on its own, but to me it was missing a little bit of flair. And if Marjorie Liu is bringing that from like to a monstrous level of quality and like maybe world building, because BRZKR like it didn't came on its own as a world until the end of the run, the first run. So anyways, I think I'll check it out and you should too. So BRZKR The Bleeding Tide number 1 by Boom Studios. I'll check it out. Next. So, I think I mentioned the Department of Truth before by our old D&, James Tynion, who seems to appear in each and every one of my episodes. Man, I just love the guy. But anyways, the Department of Truth, is it dystopian? But this alternative sci-fi, big sci-fi, dramatic, nightmarish, horror world where there is a department in the US government that creates fantasies that ultimately creates reality. There has been one kind of like ongoing thread throughout the whole series, and it's like the bad guys and the good guys under a million quotation marks, right? But now we are finally seeing like it's not like a final showdown or anything, but I think it's settling down into finally giving us the opposing forces, which is the department against Black Hat, right? We're finally going to see the opposing forces come towards the light, or like the main focus of the story, and having the heroes in between, like being right there. And the good thing about this is that, as I said, bad guys and good guys under like a million quotations. Both Black Hat and the department are like such ambiguous organizations that it's really hard to see one is good and one is bad. They're just two cores of power manipulating reality and manipulating truth. That has been a hell of interesting trip throughout this series. Now under like number 34 is not like a big or like a easy jumping point, and it's not an easy series to read, but it's a really good read. It's a really, really good read. And I don't know, probably the whole Department of Truth until this moment is like a 300 book total or something. It has been quite a ride, but I'm telling you, if you decide to take that ride, you get into this point. This is like the end sequence of a Marvel movie. I mean, at least I hope that that's the case, where you have like true motivations and like true leaders and true warriors coming into light. Now we're gonna fight, but we're not gonna fight with superpowers or guns. We're gonna fight for the truth, and not for the objective truth, but for the manipulated truth, the true power of the world. It's been hella interesting, like super interesting, and I hope we get like a big confrontation for whatever it's worth on this sci-fi fantastic horror, as I said, circumstances. I don't know. Department of Truth has been another like big huge hit. The art is amazing. It's like every issue is a nightmare, and it gives you that sensation that truth doesn't really matter. It's amazing, and I hope this is not the end, but like a climax of sorts. At least the cover is like some epic shit right there. The Department of Truth, number 34. Next. I mentioned Detective Comics, the current run when it started, right? And since then, this is another type of update situation where Batman has been infected by kind of like what they call it, like the fear virus or something. But he has a virus and he's dying. Of course. But he has some time to solve the mystery. The new character, the new villain, the Lion, we haven't really seen him that much. But what is the update and the appeal of Detective Comics number 1103? Wait, 1103, right? Yeah, 1103. Is that Batman is coming to Metropolis and he's gonna have some interactions with Lois and Superman, which is always fun, but under this circumstance, I don't know, I'm expecting to see Batman and Lois. I think that's what piqued my attention from the whole concept, or like, I don't know. You know, I talked at the beginning, with Arcadia, the new title that has Batman the Question. I sort of miss a detective story. Well, this is Detective Comics, a detective comic led by Batman that has some like elements to it. I don't know, like Death in the Family, or like the original Hush, like, you know, something that is not too much about the hero side, more about the case. And I hope they do that. And if they add some of the Metropolis characters into it, If they do it smartly, it's always good, because Superman has a complete different vibe, and like he solves everything, like in a godlike almost manner. But this is Batman, and he's gonna solve the mystery by being cunning. And I don't know. I hope the new bad guy does something else though. It's been pretty lame. I mean, not necessarily lame, but like, yeah, he's a new guy. What is he gonna do? What is he gonna do against Batman and Superman and maybe Lois Lane, right? Who knows? Hopefully he gets some opportunity to shine. But this new The Courage That Kills storyline has been entertaining. Has been highly entertaining, and I hope they go like the detective side coming into part 3 in Detective Comics. I'm not gonna say the number again. Next. So I have I don't know how to say it. It's not a weakness, but I have a predilection for artist Piotr Kowalski. I remember seeing him in this. What was the name? The comic was called Sex. Just Sex. God, I had it written down. It was one of the first sort of Joe Casey. One of the first. How can you say it? Like basically back on 2019. When did Sex came out? 2016. Well, this is pretty old by now. But I was just reading like mostly general comics. I was of course reading Marvel and DC, and I didn't really want to go back or too deep into more like quote unquote adult and complex stories. You know, like big complex stories, like where the world building is not about fantasy or like big alien planets, but where the world building is just a bunch of characters, quote unquote, being real and like doing sort of like not fantastic situations, but like real characters doing enhanced situations. And that's what when I got into Sex by Joe Casey and Piotr Kowalski, and since then I've been in love with his art. He's been mostly linked to horror, and this new Devil on My Shoulder, so it seems to be a lot of like horror oriented. And well, I haven't read that much from the writer Kyle Starks, but he's done a bunch of shit, as many of them have. But it's Piotr Kowalski. That's the truth. That's the truth. I'm recommending this solely and purely because of the artist. I think I'm allowed, right? I think I'm allowed to do it. I think I had written down something I liked from Kyle Starks. Where is it in my notes? Oh, yeah. He did I Hate This Place, or I Fucking Hate This Place, which was a horror story about these two girls that went into like a haunted house. And of course they didn't know what was the source of the haunting, but it was pretty extreme, pretty hardcore. There were like demons, a lot of blood, there were family stories. Yeah, that comic is tight. I fucking hate this place. So Kyle Starks is a good horror writer, and if you mix him then with Piotr Kowalski, yeah, how can I not recommend The Devil on My Shoulder by Dark Horse Comics? I don't know. I think the issue with, or like not an issue, but the main thing to me with horror in comic books is that it never had that same impact as another visual media. So you have like big names like Colin Bunn, like people that always seems to, or even Mike Mignola, the people that are always being recognized by horror in comic books. And to me, horror in comic books is such a strange thing, because it's not about being scared or anything, but unlike what happens in visual media, You get into the mind of the horror characters in comic books by the nature of the media itself, right? So you can have some deeper connection between the visuals and the characters in comic books, but at the same time, it's not that scary. I hope that makes sense. Like, to me, in my mind, it makes sense. Like, I'm not gonna get scared, but I'm gonna see the disturbance in the force through this particular relationship that can only happen in comic books. They should do like a comic book of, I don't know, some Cronenberg movies. What was the one with RoboCop in it, where he was a writer? I think that would be a kick-ass comic book. There's probably already an adaptation on it, where like RoboCop, he's a writer. I think he's a news writer, and then he has like his typewriter becomes like a monster. What's the name of that movie? Fuck it, but whatever. Piotr Kowalski. I love this artist, and Carlz has a book that I love too. So horror from two guys that I like. What's not to love? Devil on My Shoulder by Dark Horse Comics. This is I said that I was gonna try to branch out into more publishing companies, and DSTLRY with their premium format. Um, I'm about like choosing one, or like choosing every once in a while, choosing a book that sounds interesting. I mentioned Kurt Pires before. For some reason, I just find him to be so worthy. Like one of his current books, the what is it called? The Power Fantasy, Lost Fantasy, has so many praises, and I can't get into it. I just can't. I feel like he's too damn worthy, and it's exhausting. And I know I'm a reader, and I love to read, but sometimes you get into books, and to comic books in particular, and they're so worthy. But he can do some fun stuff, and I think that's the idea with Galactic. They say that it's like Star Wars with Quentin Tarantino. You know how they do in press releases. I just hope it's fun. That's it. As I said, I wanna try to highlight at least one title from people that I'm like vaguely familiar with on these other publishing companies, and try to give them a shot. At least the other book, the what was the Earth Beneath the World Beneath Her Feet or something by James Tanyon. I already read issue 1 and 2, and it's pretty fun. You can tell it's not like the classic Tanyon story. It's more like, I don't want to say artistic, but it feels like it's more artistic. It's less linear. It's less like easy to get into. It's more like visual, and I think that's the idea for this publishing company. I guess, with their format and everything. But anyways, I'm gonna give this one a look. As I said, I'm begrudgingly a Kurt Pires follower, but anyways, I'm gonna give this one a shot, and then I'll come back to you guys. Next. This is a strange one because I'm not a Lovecraft fan. Even though I love horror, I'm not a Lovecraft fan. And I was really not that enthusiastic about getting into this book, The Last Day of H.P. Lovecraft, because of that reason. I'm not the biggest Lovecraft fan. I think, I don't know, he clearly has had an impact, not only in horror, but like in sci-fi as well. After I read that he was basically kind of like a racist and like a little bit of a bigot, my image of him changed. So the whole point of The Last Day of H.P. Lovecraft is try to put you into not his shoes, but into his mind. And I enjoyed it because, well, I enjoyed the issue 1 because somehow I saw a degree of empathy with the writer. somehow I saw a little bit of an idea of how could you accept a person, like even if if they were indeed bigots or anything, but having a conception, an idea of the world in their minds that it's all horror coded. I think that was the best exercise that I got from issue 1. How would you see the world horror coded? Because even if I'm a horror fan, which I am, and if I consume a lot of it, which I do, I don't think my brain is horror coded. It's not. So that notion of this guy on his last day seeing the world in this so fucked up way is a great imaginative exercise. How would it be to see the world quote unquote horror coded? So even if, like me, you are not a big fan of Lovecraft, or like just respect the guy for the influence he had, I think this comic is worth it just for that. As I said, what would it be to see the world horror coded? And how would that help us to understand not only the author, but potentially his legacy? I don't think they will touch on the fact that he was probably a bigot, but I guess that could be part of how to see the world horror coded. Or if you see the world horror coded, it might be easier for you to be a bigot. You know, it's the same source of fear that you see everything as a source of fear or something to be afraid of. I think that's a perfect setup for you to become a bigot, which he probably was. The Last Days of H.P. Lovecraft by Boom Studios, issue 2. This is a small update. I recommended the Skinbreaker, issue 1. It was pretty interesting for being Robert Kirkman, and you know, when I said that Kurt Perez was worthy, I think what I like the most about Robert Kirkman is when he's the opposite of that. It's not like he's not he's a writer, right? It's not like he's not worthy, but I think his best sort of characteristic is how he creates rhythm in his work. I'm also reading The Walking Dead Deluxe, and you can tell when a Walking Dead issue goes a little bit on the wordy side. When they try to introduce, I don't know, either more characters, more lore. But Skinbreaker, from issue 1 to 3, it has been like the opposite. It has an underlying motive that is implicit in it, that it's so like expressively and in an agile way explained on issue 1. These two opposing ideologies for a tribe. I don't want to spoil it, right? But two opposing ideologies for a tribe. And what do you do where, like, between issue 1 through 3? You play with time, you play with the speed of time, you play with how the time affect these characters, and you have a really interesting setup in a really short time with, I was gonna say with as few words as possible, but that sounds kind of like demeaning, right, for a writer. I mean it in a good way. How can you create a world, create a setting, create a conflict, make interesting characters so fast? That's what Skinbreaker has done in 3 issues. So it's really not too late. On the opposite, the complete opposite, is the perfect moment to get into it. It has been so agile, so fun, and I guess I want to highlight it this week to oppose it a little bit to my reaction to Kurt Perez's wordiness. But anyways, Robert Kirkman's Skinbreaker, issue 3. It's pretty good. Another like kind of like update I had to talk about. I could have talked about KO's the main thing right now, but this is gonna be a fast one. The Superman tie-in for KO. Superman went forward first phase in the tournament, and now he has to quote unquote face Lex Luthor. I'm not gonna fully spoil how we reached this point, but Lex Luthor has been a character that in the main Superman storyline has been sort of soft resetted. He lost his memory, he was good, he was ambiguous for a time. Like, I'm calling this the reintroduction of Lex Luthor, and they have sold it a little bit like that as well. This is the reintroduction of Lex Luthor proper, and not like an alternative Lex Luthor, like the main Lex Luthor, the one that eventually is gonna come back to the main Superman series and is gonna be the main antagonist. So that's why I'm recommending Superman's tie into the DC KO event. This is really the reintroduction of Lex Luthor. If you like Superman and the DC universe in general, you gotta read this issue. Even though in the cover is like his ass is way too highlighted, right? And he has like a face. Those two spots are like eyes, and it's like his ass is a face. But anyways, the reintroduction of Lex Luthor, and I'm not like 100% sure that's going to be the case, but I wonder if this is gonna be the setup for the foreseeable future for Lex Luthor. Like, out of this, we're gonna get the next big thing with Lex Luthor, because it's Lex Luthor. I said Lex Luthor like 5 times in 5 seconds. But anyways, get it or see it. And last but not least, I began talking about Dani Moonstar, and I wanted to end talking about Dani Moonstar as part of the Age Revelation storyline, which I said last week, and I'm probably gonna keep saying it for the foreseeable future, has been an awesome event. The X-Vengers series of Age of storyline inside the Age of Revelation event has Dani Moonstar as not Captain America, but as the leader of the Avengers of the Age of Revelation. It was such a good choice. I'm coming out as like a Dani Moonstar fanboy, but like, well, I really like the character. But you know how they always make a big deal of who wears the shield? And that has come to be an important thing in Marvel in general. And whenever they do that, they bring whichever character is carrying the shield into a narrative position, which is so interesting, because not only they have to represent the shield and what it means, but they have to represent their own interests. You know, who they are, what they believe in. And if Captain America gives you the shield, he sort of validates not only what you believe, but it calls you to represent what you believe in a stronger manner. And in a world where like most Avengers died, or many of them mutated by the virus in the Age of Revelation, which made everyone either a mutant or like kill them, it's like, how do you shape leadership and freedom under like another world caught up by authoritarianism? The fact that Dani has the shield is a low-key big deal, but it's still like kind of like a niche thing. They don't go fully on her heritage, on her role as an X-Men. They don't go fully into that, but I love how random it was that she was the one holding the shield, and how they, as I said, use the shield to highlight personality traits, ideas that are like peculiar to this comparatively small character. Like, it's not the same for Dani Moonstar to have the shield than to Wolverine, like fucking Cyclops, right? Like it's not the same. This is a smaller character given a chance to shine. How will this be related to her solo series in March? I don't know, but given the fact that Marvel has a shit ton of characters, whenever like a less known one gets a chance to shine, it's always good to me. Even if the story ends up being not that good, it's a good thing that other characters get to shine, not always the same ones. So I can't recommend this one enough. I can't recommend any of the Age of Revelation books enough, really. I've been enjoying it so much, but I gotta say, I just posted my comments on the end of One World of Doom, and I haven't had the chance to read the damn thing. I haven't read it yet. I haven't read it yet, man. Should I do it today? I might try to do it. I might try to do it today. But anyways, that's this week's worth of books. Is it last week of November? Holy shit, is it last week of November? Whatever, man. Just keep going. As long as there are comic books for us to read, enjoy, and transport us to magical and fantastical places that are way better than our common mundane reality, we will be here. So I guess there's nothing more to say, but see you in December, where I hope that I could at least talk about One World of Doom. What's going to happen? I don't know. I bet many people already know that, but whatever. Thank you all for listening. Go Dani. Go. I was gonna say go Doom, but like fuck Doom. Oh no, that's mean. See you all next week on December. See you then. Bye bye.